Hey everyone, Tony D with another hot take, and this one is, of course, about the Bernie Bros. Again, God, you Bernie Bros are annoying. You really, really, really need to calm down. You just need to calm the hell down. I got a lot of reaction to some of my videos on YouTube and on BitChute. Um, the funny thing on BitChute was the reaction I got was from a libertarian sounding guy. I don't know if he's libertarian, but he was chastising me for not acknowledging Trump's reckless spending, which, duh. I've said that in plenty of videos, actually. Trump's greatest weakness is he spends his way out of a problem. That's what rich guys do. That's what he's always done, and it's always worked for him in the past, and it's going to work for him in the not too distant future. Will there be a bust? Oh yeah, that bill's coming due, Trump fans. I know you love Trump, but just understand that Trump doesn't know how to pay his bills. He never has. He has declared bankruptcy. That's how he pays his bills, and then it all gets reset, and he goes his merry way. So he's spending too much money. And when I say he's spending too much money, it's not that he shouldn't spend money on certain things and various projects that he wants. The problem is he's maintaining the spending at all levels. He's maintaining, during the tariffs with China, he beefed up the farmer subsidies, which you can argue, well, he had to do that because farmers would have went broke. Yeah, but those farm subsidies are a holdover from like FDR. We really need to rethink the farm subsidies situation because there are also a lot of people in this country who, if they're rich and they have a big enough estate, they are technically living on a farm and they take advantage of the subsidies. They have hay farms and they have a gardening staff, a couple of tractors, and they harvest the hay just so they can get a subsidy from the government to probably offset most of their gardening costs. That's something I'd really love to see eliminated. Libertarian over here. There's lots of things like that in the government. And not that Trump didn't try to tackle a little bit of it. I mean, when he said, get rid of 2 regulations for every one, step in the right direction. Kind of not a hard and fast rule, though, and because he sort of left it open, you can kind of get rid of any regulation you want and not necessarily the ones that are lining the pockets of the guys who are writing the regulations, if you know what I'm saying. So, and Trump's probably his other greatest weakness is he's not a details guy, right? He's broad strokes guy. It's broad strokes. Everything's broad strokes with him, which, is to his advantage. I'm not knocking him for it, but the guy doesn't know the details of these things. So a lot of stuff's going to fall through the cracks, like, the stuff in farm subsidies, all these little scams people are pulling. That stuff's going to fall through the cracks, and it's not going to be addressed. So, yeah. I started talking about Bernie, and I ended up bashing Trump. But the reason I'm talking about it is because the Bernie Bros are out of control. You guys, you cannot accept. You've got one tiny little victory here, and you're already, fitting Bernie for his presidential portrait. He is not going to win. He's not even going to get the nomination, likely. He's got a hardcore 25% of the Democratic parties who will come out to vote for him. They'll all come out. And in a lot of places they won't. Because as someone rightly points out, there are a lot of people who just won't come out to vote for him. That's true. But almost all the other voters, almost everybody who's voting for Buttigieg, Biden, Elizabeth Warren, mostly, Amy Klobuchar, all those people, they're not going to back Sanders. They're not going to back him. you know, the only one who probably owes Bernie a backing would be Elizabeth Warren, since she basically copied his platform to a large degree. I don't even think she'll back him, because she's she's a hardcore politician. She's going to stay in this game. She might run again next, another 4 years. She can take another run at it. Why not? I don't know, how old will she be? She'll be pretty old. Maybe not, but she's a woman. Women live longer, so maybe. Bernie is just, when they add up all the delegates, Bernie will have earned the most out of all the politicians, most likely, except for maybe one, probably Buttigieg, as it's looking now. But don't count out Biden yet. He's gone to South Carolina, and he's pretty determined to win that state and turn the whole thing around. So you're probably looking at a contested election, contested convention, and I can tell you from the Ron Paul experience, the guys who run the party, they don't like contested elections anymore, especially when they're desperate to win. In 2012, they were desperate to beat Barack Obama by any means necessary. And they did not want to consider a contested convention with Ron Paul, because they didn't want the party to look, messed up. They wanted the party to look unified. And at that time, Jeb Bush, Mitt Romney, all those guys, they were the Mark Rubio, all those guys controlled the party. That what they said went. Trump's voice was, they dismissed Trump. So, the people who ran, and the other people who, names I don't know in the party, who are high up there, they run things. So I'm sure they went to Ron Paul, and said, listen, what do you want? We need your endorsement, endorse Mitt, and we'll give you this or that or this. And Ron Paul, being Ron Paul, said, no, I can't endorse you. He stuck to his principles. In response, they completely shafted him. They took away all his delegates. They changed the rules so he couldn't possibly win or even get a contested election. He would not have won. He might have gotten a contested election if they had played fair. There was a big controversy in Maine and a couple other places. He might have had just enough delegates to contest the election if they had played by the rules. They didn't want to play by the rules. They're a private entity. They can choose not to, as can the DNC. The DNC, however, is controlled by the Clintons. They bailed them out and they run it. So do you think Hillary Clinton's going to be okay with Bernie? I kind of don't think so. She's making a lot of noise saying that nobody likes Bernie. Hillary, first off, shut up. If you really don't want, if you're going to talk Bernie right into the seat, if you don't shut your mouth, my God, woman. But it is likely that the rest of the party will just, even if Bernie somehow magically pulls it out, they just won't pick him. They'll shaft him again. Well, they won't shaft him again. They'll give him something. They'll give him something good. They'll give him Secretary of State, or they'll do what they did for Hillary. They'll give him Secretary of State, or maybe they'll make him VP. Maybe it'll be Buttigieg with Bernie as the VP, and then that way they can hope that the commies go, oh, okay. And maybe they don't, maybe they're not happy, but they don't burn Milwaukee down, which is a dumb thing to say, Project Veritas guy. A dumb thing to think and a dumb thing to strive for. I kind of think they're not going to make a deal with the commies. I think they're just going to, they may give Bernie something, because you got to understand, Bernie Sanders has been playing the game for a while, and he did endorse Hillary. He paid his dues, and he's due. He's going to have delegates going in, and he's willing to play ball, so they're going to give him something, because he's one of them, ultimately. he may be the most left among them, but he's one of them, and he's going to play politics and go, okay, I'll take Secretary of Education, whatever. He'll take something. If they promise, maybe they'll just promise to name some libraries after him or whatever. Whatever happens, he's not going to be the candidate unless something incredibly drastic happens. And by drastic, I mean some kind of major scandal, like if Buttigieg comes out and admits that he's a cutout for the CIA, and then Biden has a heart attack and Elizabeth Warren loses her mind. It had to be like a confluence of a bunch of things, and then Bernie is the only guy left standing. But he's not able to win. The math just doesn't work out. You have to prepare yourself for that. And you have to look at the bright side of that. If Bernie plays ball, you could get something. You could get something of your progressive agenda in the platform of the party. Now, I personally don't agree with most of what Bernie says, although he's not a total war hawk, so good for him. I would be more impressed with, say, some of Tulsi Gabbard's platform. Maybe if Bernie could pull the Democrats to the anti-war side, if he actually believed that. I think at this point in his career, he's flip-flopped too many times on too many different things. He's not, the only thing consistent about him is really he's a communist. He's a communist. He's a socialist and he's a communist, and he believes in that. And he thinks it could all work, but he doesn't have any support for it. None. Short of a total economic collapse of the United States and people so desperate to believe that, to have the government hand them food, you cannot make this work in the United States. We have too much money. There's too many things going on. Nobody wants that socialist BS. Nobody wants to pay all those taxes. Nobody's going to voluntarily destroy all our economic gains. Although, again, the libertarian points out quite correctly that those gains will be gone anyway when the dollar breaks and the whole system collapses. But that, again, could be pushed off another 100 years. Who knows? I mean, Ron Paul's been talking about it since he's been in Congress, and that was like starting in the 70s, I think. So, it still hasn't happened this long, and Trump has staved it off, at least to some degree, because he's created some wealth for the people on the bottom, like me. I mean, he's just created more jobs. And at the very least, if things do collapse, the people who had those jobs will not starve immediately, and they'll have some time to gather their wits and hopefully come up with a solution other than, hey, let's try communism. So, Bernie Bros, if you go bananas and Antifa shows up and tears the place down in Milwaukee during the convention, you're not going to win anything. This has been proven by history. The hippies, they went bananas in Chicago. It didn't really do anything, and that was at least... See, the thing with the hippies that they have over you is they weren't, they were anti-war. So their violence was seen in a different light. They weren't seen as thugs per se. They were seen as earnest kids trying to make a change. And the response was heavy-handed, more heavy-handed. They were just annoying, and they'd annoy the cops until the cops beat them. And then that all got on TV, and then people went, oh my God, those poor kids. What are they complaining about? The war? Yeah, the war's terrible. I agree with those kids. That's the way it works. That's not going to happen for you. They're going to say, what the hell are these black hoodie crazies doing? Oh my God, they're lighting fires. They're throwing bottles. These guys are a-holes. I hope the cops arrest them. And then they'll see the tentative cops. Well, I don't know. Milwaukee cops? Probably not going to be so tentative. Not like the guys in Portland. They're probably going to come in, crack some skulls, and make a bunch of mass arrests, and nobody's going to feel sorry for you. They felt bad for the hippies. We all felt bad for the hippies because they wanted peace and love. You want communism. Nobody wants that. So you have to either change your ways, not be violent, Don't, be more like the hippies. You could also change your whole look. If you really wanted to shock people and get them to cover you, show up, pull up MLK, have everybody show up in suits, carry Bibles or communist manifestos if that's what you prefer, and sing some spirituals and look united and polite, and say hello, we're communists and we want Bernie, and oh, we didn't win, but we're going to stand here until someone notices us. And then at least people will go, well, maybe these guys aren't so bad. What's all this communism about? I'll read about it. See, that would be the way to do it. But you're idiots. And you're not going to do that. So, and even if a handful of you see this video and say, wow, that's a good idea, and try to do that, there'll be a bunch of lunatics in your group, and you know who they are, that simply won't go along. They'll see the suits as a threat. There was a recent study that just came out that's also being talked about online, how being left extremists, left-leaning extremists tend to have more mental problems than most people, even more so than right-wing extremists. So, which doesn't surprise anyone who's had an encounter with some crazy screaming Antifa members. There was another guy in the news. He is 34. Antifa guy slapped a 15-year-old kid who was wearing a MAGA hat, and was a Trump supporter. That's just incredibly wrong. 15-year-old kids are annoying, but you don't slap a kid. It's just crazy. And he's under arrest. There was the guy who drove his van through a Trump supporters voting registration table and tent in Florida. I think there was one other. The extreme violence is what's going to do you in, because keep in mind, right-wingers are more law and order types, and they want law and order. So when they deliver law and order, everybody will go, oh, okay, yeah, this seems to be working out. Yeah, so we seem to need this law and order. They're not going to go, oh my God, we need more communism. Nobody's going to watch the riot supposedly in Milwaukee and go, well, we certainly need some communism. If we had had communism, this wouldn't have happened. They're not going to say that. They're not going to say that if Bernie is elected president. They're just not going to say that. Communism and socialism don't work. They're not popular here. They never were. Despite what your professors have told you, communism doesn't work. Okay? And I know a lot of you Bernie supporters are like, well, he's not a communist. Oh, he's a socialist. Oh, he's not a socialist. He is. Okay, he is. He's essentially that guy. He's the guy in the room who's the most left-leaning guy, and he has been for decades. And that was his role, to be the most left-leaning guy. Now that AOC's on the scene and sort of screwing up his whole hustle, it can't work for him anymore. And this is his last hurrah. So if you want anything out of a Bernie Sanders campaign, you got to play ball, because you can't win. You can't win. So get what you can, or suffer the consequences of whatever crazy Antifa thing happens. And before Bernie goes to Milwaukee, you really, really ought to urge him to disavow Antifa and their antics and their political violence. Like, big time. Like, coming out and giving a speech completely against political violence. And clarifying that when he means a revolution, he means a political revolution, not a violent revolution. He should do that. If you don't do that, Trump would have a field day with the Project Veritas clips. An absolute field day. That's all he'd have to play. Just play the clips. Nobody would vote for Bernie. Wake up, Bernie bros. Please, wake up.